Oh, that was a big shock. Actually, I was supposed to go to Phuket day before for Christmas Eve. We canceled last minute. The next morning, a friend of mine who flew down called me the next morning and said, you know what happened? So we all turned on the television and we saw what happened.
Welcome to Fruiting Body Podcast with your host, Brendan. Today, we have another absolute legend of a guest. It is Thomas Petermöller. Thomas has been living in Phuket, Thailand for over 40 years. Now, he's been coming and going since the 80s, but we're going to be connecting his story and understanding his dream of first coming here as a traveler and finally making it here to retirement. Now, Thomas is the owner of Eating Grills, so we're going to be talking a lot about his new business as well. Again, we're not shilling that. These are people living on the island, so we want to tell you their stories. Again, as we do on the Fruiting Body Podcast, it's their journey and connection to Thailand and what actually brought them here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to know a little bit about who we are, Fruiting Body Podcast is a medicinal mushroom company. Our bottles are on the table. I'm not going to touch them. Product launching in January. We're doing things like lion's mane and reishi and whatnot. By the way, if you're sick and tired of listening to me talk, we got timestamps down here. Just go to YouTube. They're chapters. You can skip ahead. You'll see the titles. Maybe you're going to be more intrigued on another piece of content within this podcast. Let's get this started. I check my checklist. Anything else? No, we're good to go. Okay, so without further ado, let's get this started with Thomas. Hey, Thomas, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you, Brendan. Nice to be here.
Let's take it right back. We were discussing downstairs. You first visited Thailand back in the 80s. What first actually brought you to travel to Thailand, and what was it like back then?
Well, first of all, it was quite different from now. I came to Thailand actually on a business trip because at the time I was working for a major European retail corporation in Hong Kong, and we started to import textiles from Thailand. Mainly knitwear. Thailand was a very big knitwear center. So I came here as a 22-year-old came here frequently because we had several factories we worked with. And from that point onwards, I started to like Thailand very much for many reasons.
Were you primarily in Bangkok working with factories, or were you sourcing fabrics?
We were sourcing garments, ready-made garments, mainly around Bangkok. Yes.
Has that industry changed a lot? Like it's moved to Bangladesh, Indonesia, or does it still exist?
It's completely gone.
Completely gone?
It's completely gone, yeah. Already in the early 90s, which is a jump now. In the early 90s, a lot of Thai garment industries moved away. Countries like Indonesia, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, they took over at way better prices. Thailand tried to upgrade their production to higher fashion levels, but assumingly they didn't make it really to that level. And so the majority of industries disappeared, unless they were heavily involved in the local market as well, like Triumph or Adidas. They still produce in Thailand, if not in Vietnam.
When you first came here, like in the 80s, and doing this like type of sourcing and working with these garment manufacturers, could you even recall that these trailblazers like Jim Thompson from the 60s, were these people that you kind of had to, understand their business model and how they even set this up?
No, Jim Thompson was very much into silks.
Okay.
Whereas we worked with T-shirts, a lot of knitted stuff, up to sweaters. Thailand was a very good sweater maker. Angora, Shetland wool, lamb's wool, and so on. So we worked mainly with those more commercial factories that were 90% export-oriented.
Now, that story of Jim Thompson going missing, around that time when you're in the industry, was that massive news? Were you well aware of what was going on?
That was way before. Jim Thompson had disappeared already before I came.
So he was the 70s then, almost disappeared.
I think so. It was in the 70s. I can't really recall.
Yeah, I'm trying to get someone on from Jim Thompson Museum. We've tried to contact them. We want to get someone to come on and really explain the story, because there's so much. Was it a business partner in the stories? There was a lion or a tiger in Malaysia. No one really knows what happened.
I know one lady. Her name is Kanita. She was also very much into the silk business, so she was basically a competitor of Jim Thompson. She still knew him personally.
Well, maybe if she's the competitor, there's the conspiracy there. Maybe she will, maybe she won't come on. When you were coming in the 80s, now, was it just strictly business? Did you get the opportunity to travel to some of the islands while you're out here?
Of course, because, when you do business, you start meeting people, you start making friends, and then, of course, people said, why don't you come over the weekend? So we came on Thursdays, did our business on Thursdays and Fridays, and Saturdays we just left.
Were you going to like Phuket, Koh Samui, or some of the islands around
Well, you must
Bangkok?
see in the early 80s, Phuket, Samui were completely underdeveloped. Samui didn't have an airport. Phuket had nothing. There was only Patong Beach. That was basically one strip at the beach. There was one single hotel called the Patong Beach Hotel. Mm-hmm. The rest was bungalows. And then no other beach was developed at the time. So first direction was always Pattaya, right? Because Pattaya at that time was already a tourist spot, let's put it this way. Whereas the other places were completely underdeveloped.
Was there even an airport in the Phuket in the 80s?
There was a small strip. Okay. Yes, you can call that airport. It's a bit like Samui in the old days.
Okay.
But no comparison to our days.
I'm assuming the airport still would have been up in the Nai area.
Yeah, it was also in the north. Yeah.
And then how were you coming to Phuket in the 80s, or still kind of staying?
No, I came to Phuket in the 80s.
So how, I mean, imagine landing in Nai in the 80s and then making your way down to Patong. Like, what was the road like? Was there a highway? Was it a dirt road?
No, it was more or less one single asphalt road, and the rest was dirt roads. Yeah.
That's crazy. And now, was it this beach road here, or would you have to go out through the highway? Or if you can recall back.
There was no highway. There was a simple asphalt road. I think it was even one that didn't even go further than Patong.
Okay.
Right? So Karon was not developed. Qatar was not there. Rawai, all this wasn't there. There was all jungle.
So you'd be kind of taking this single road right into Patong.
Right into Patong.
Now, 2 lanes, 1 lane?
2 lanes.
Okay. Because I know I've been to El Nido and Palawan years ago, maybe 6-7 years ago. And when you land in, have you been to El Nido or Puerto Princesa in the Philippines?
Yes.
I was there 6 years ago, and you had to land. I landed in Puerto Princesa, and then we took a bus up to El Nido. And even in that time, 6 years ago, they're making the road by hand, and the bus would literally have to, when they're doing that type of white concrete, and you have to pull over. I'm trying to like visualize if that's kind of like what Phuket was, or if it was still.
It was exactly the same. I mean, I was in the Philippines also in the 80s, flying to Cebu and going to Boracay. Exactly the same. They just put simple cement on dirt roads. There's no structure underneath.
Yeah.
So with the climate we have here, it's breaking up very quickly. So you can imagine the condition of the road. But at least it was an asphalt road, you know, where everything else was dirt roads.
Over the time from like the 80s to today, can you recall like any milestones where Phuket, really started to open up? Was it late 90s, like well before obviously the tsunami? But was there like a catalyst that like really unlocked Phuket?
No, I wouldn't say so. I came here from time to time. At that time, I was living in Bangkok, right? So for the first 12 years. And it grew organically. We're growing tourism. There were quite a number of people that didn't like Pattaya so much because Pattaya was at that time also already quite commercial. And it had this image, Torre del Mar in Spain, Rimini in Italy, these places. Mallorca where mass tourism goes, drinks a lot, and does a lot of other things, people started to dislike Pattaya. So they were looking for more serene places, beauty, natural beauty, untouched beaches. So it started actually with Koh Samet, which is south of Pattaya. And then it gradually moved downwards to places that had similar environments. So that's how Phuket started to grow. So Patong grew bigger, and then the first hotel groups got interested in Phuket, and they looked at places that were really beautiful. So I think the earliest after Patong was Qatar, right? Going in line a little bit with Caron, but Qatar was the Club Med got interested. There was a place in Qatar called the Boathouse.
Yeah, that's still there, yeah.
Yeah, that's still there. It has been sold many times and it has been upgraded, but it was what was there before. So, yeah.
Yeah, we had a guy on the podcast. He was a journalist for a paper in the 90s, late 90s, and he was here in the late 80s. His name was Steve Ross. And he said he was working down at the boathouse there, and that was pretty much all that was down there at the time. And it was mostly, he was saying, like, it would be the royalty coming and going. It was much more high class. And
yeah, it's true. It's true. And then the West Coast was developed much earlier than the East Coast. The East Coast was more for local people, right? And then the West Coast was where all the beautiful beaches were. But mind you, even 10 years ago, there was nothing in the north. Where you have now Mai Khao and Naiton, that wasn't there 15 years ago.
Interesting to see now the development here in Phuket. And I mean, even this current high season, I think this is probably the busiest it's been since I can remember. I mean, it's the roads are just jam-packed now.
Yeah. Well, pre-COVID, I think it was even more. Mind you, the Chinese cannot travel, so a lot of people, a lot of buses are not going around. However, it has. Comparing it with the COVID times, it is much better now.
Okay, we're going to jump right back on that, but a quick word from our sponsor. Big thanks to 5 Star Marine. They're helping to keep this podcast running. You can check them out. We'll leave links in the description. 5 Star Marine. They're a VIP speedboat, kind of a speedboat private tour on the island of Phuket. So if you're ever looking to kind of create your own package and you're going to go off the East Coast and see Phang Na, Krabi, PP, and you really want to control your trip, this is probably the better way to do it instead of being crammed like a sardine on a 40-person speedboat. So go check them out. It's 5 Star Marine, Instagram at 5 Star Marine Phuket, and links in the description. So big thanks out. Thanks a lot, 5 Star, for letting us to continue to operate. Back in talking more about the tourism and how that changed. Now you're here in the 80s. When did you leave Thailand and maybe did you go back to Europe or the US? And what drove you to end up coming back here?
Well, basically, I left in the mid-90s back to Germany. The reason was that my industry, textile industry, was really going down for Thailand. So there was no point of being here. I sold my factory. I had a factory at that time. I sold my factory to a Japanese company that did more inter-Asian business with less price competition. So I left to Europe and was basically, a consultant for international business specifically for Asia. So I advised SMEs on how to do international business, international logistics, international finance, how to communicate with Asian companies and stuff like that. So, and that drove me actually away from the textiles and drove me into medical products.
Okay.
So I went with part of the family because I come from a very medical-oriented family. We went into medical consumables, buying them from Asia and bringing them into hospitals in Europe. So that was another 20 years of my life, basically based in Europe, but I came to Asia at least for 4 months a year, just visiting factories and being in Thailand quite a bit, because I still had property from the times here anyway. And throughout that period in Europe, I realized that Thailand is sort of my second home. I feel very attached to the country. Fortunately, I speak the language, which makes it much easier. Many people didn't bother to learn the language, but it's extremely helpful. And so I actually plan to retire here.
How long was that, the gap between, initially coming in the 80s and finally settling down here?
The gap was 18 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's I came back here to Phuket 2018. And and I planned to
2018.
2018.
Were you here when the tsunamis happened? Could you recall?
I was in
that?
Thailand. Yes, but I was in Bangkok.
Okay.
So
what was it like during that time, if you can recall?
Oh, that was a big shock. Actually, I was supposed to go to Phuket the day before for Christmas Eve. We canceled last minute because there was a big invitation at a friend's house. And the next morning, a friend of mine who flew down called me the next morning around 9 a.m. and said, you know what happened? So we all turned on the television and we saw what happened.
Yeah. Now, I've had some discussions with other people on the podcast and trying to do the connection between, the disaster of the tsunami versus, we don't like to use the C word, but the current situation of what happened over the past 2 years. Do you think that disaster, the recovery phase, was it much quicker than what's going to be happening from, let's say, COVID essentially? Like, because they're both, one is like they both devastated Phuket and the economy, but are we starting to rebound much quicker than that, or how would you compare the two?
I would compare them is that people were much more concerned at the time for the tsunami. Huge loss of life. Actually, we all, a couple of us flew down, including me, to help in the rescue operations. It was different. I think when you have a human disaster like this with so many people dead and so much devastation, that it comes a little bit different than COVID. Yes, the economy suffered a lot during COVID here, but life still went on. We had a lockdown phase much shorter than any other country in the world. Actually, living here was for us a
blessing. A blessing in the sky.
Yeah, a blessing in the sky. Yeah. The people in Europe, in Germany, they were locked up. So I think you can't compare the two. Mm-hmm. The tsunami had a much higher impact.
Yeah. Now, for anyone that would be watching this, and I think we'll get a large audience, they're more interested on the retirement side and finally being able to settle down here. That process, was it quick? Were you able to transition like within a year? Was there a lot of planning that had to go behind it?
Yeah, well, I was a bit lucky because I had a business that could adapt very quickly to digitalization. So I'm mobile. I could do my job from anywhere. But I had enough, actually. 25 years in the same business. For me, that was enough. I had the opportunity to pass the business on to a member of my family, my nephew. So he took over. And basically, I was free. It's not like being a doctor who has his practice and has to let patients go, or a lawyer. I was mobile. So the only thing I had to do, I had to sell my house in Germany, buy a little smaller place, and move. Mm-hmm. And that was it. And the planning was there a long time ago. Finally, 2018, I could realize it, and I don't regret it a day since then.
A lot of people that are moving here, and if you want to share kind of your experience where people will come in and they will purchase like land from a developer, and you kind of went a little bit of a different route. Are you able to shed some light on that, of your approach to, you know, establishing your own home in Phuket and kind of why you took that direction?
Well, I am in a slightly different position than many others because I had a previous marriage to a Thai lady many, many years ago, but we had 2 sons. So I have 2 sons that are basically Thai. For me, it was very easy to purchase land, not going through companies or other legal loopholes in order to protect your own property. And I built my own house. I didn't buy it from a developer. So it's slightly different, but well, in our days, it's not difficult. Almost every country has real estate brokers here. So even the language is not a problem. Whether you are Russian or you are Italian or you are French, you find real estate brokers that speak the language. You find lawyers that speak the language. People that don't know maybe think, wow, if I go to Thailand or to Phuket, how do I get around doing these things? It is quite possible in our days. Phuket has become very international, and probably that's why it is one of the best spots in Asia to retire, because you have the local infrastructure, you have an airport, You'll be in Singapore in 2 hours. You'll be in Bangkok in 1 hour. You can go to Hong Kong in 2 hours. So you have a lot of metropolitan life around you for people that get tired of island life. But even within Phuket, you know, you find even up to Louis Vuitton stores, Chanel. Everything is here now. So it's not as provincial as people from outside might think.
You can quickly, I mean, if you want to be the tourist, you can hop on a boat and go to PP or Krabi, and all this stuff is close by.
That's this tourist thing.
Or if you need the city life, it's an hour flight to Bangkok.
Yeah, that's
and
what
it's
I'm saying.
Cheap as chips.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
I've never really traveled too much in Europe. I've been in Asia pretty much the past 12 years, and kind of my idea was first let me see all of Southeast Asia to Asia before my idea is to see Europe when I'm a bit older, like 45, 50 plus. And specifically just so I can just spend all the money I want. It's easy to live here. You've been to Spain, Mallorca, these other like major tourist travel destinations. In comparison of them to Phuket, is Phuket still the best place on earth to live?
To live, well, you have to look at various points. First of all, weather conditions. Originally, I thought Phuket has the best weather conditions I could think of, because even the European islands, they are dead in winter. It's not that they are freezing cold, but they run between 12 and 15 degrees. With rain, you don't want to be there, right? So for most people that retire in Europe, that would also only be a summer spot, and they would return somewhere else in their own countries for the winter time, or go into other homes depending on how much money they got. Phuket, that is a big change from the 80s to today, right? Living here in the 80s, clockwork, end of October, no more rain, right? Beautiful weather between 27, 28 degrees in the evening, 20 degrees throughout mid of March. Never, ever saw rain, right? And then came the 2 hot months, also dry, and then came the rainy period with massive showers in the late afternoon, but not all day also. That has completely changed. Mm-hmm. Weather is completely unpredictable here now, right? You could have a phase of 3 weeks no rain in July, and what you see now, rain in December.
Yeah, it's been quite strange. I'm not sure if it's almost like the weather's just transitioned and moved 2 months. Do you know what I mean? Like,
no, not really, because
what do you think it is exactly? I mean, obviously you're
well, it's climate change. I mean, it didn't stop at Phuket, you know. So in terms of being the best place of the world, the earlier question, I would say as in complexity, food, people, weather,
infrastructure,
way of life, infrastructure. Basically, I still believe it's one of the best places in the world to retire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was almost thinking like to balance your life, it's like Phuket is come and do your December to April and then go back to Europe, your April to
That's
December.
what I did in the, when did that start? That I did after my son was born. 2008. Starting 2008 until I moved here, these 10 years. I came here late November and I left in April. I had an apartment in Bangkok and we stayed here, the whole family.
Do you think you'll start to push that up like next year, maybe come in December, just because, I mean, it's been horrible this year.
I live here throughout the year now. You know, I have a 14-year-old son. He is going to British International School here. So I can leave the island only during his holidays.
And the other areas in Southeast Asia, like Phuket has everything, and especially in terms of the international schools, the malls, you can go to Bangkok. I don't think there's really another city in all of Southeast Asia or Asia that even compares, like Kuala Lumpur, these islands outside of Malaysia. Singapore is it's still very concrete and robotic, and Bali is just, forget about it. The infrastructure is a nightmare. Is there any hidden gems out there that you could foresee competing with Phuket in the next 10 to 15 years?
No, just merely by land size. Phuket has 60 by 20 kilometers, 400,000 people living here. That's a middle-sized town, right? So all the islands in Southeast Asia are much smaller.
Yeah.
Right. So Bali has a similar size, but it has also different people. Right, and infrastructure is not as good as here.
Yeah, and also Bali, it's far. I mean, Bali to fly, I think but Bangkok to Bali, there's always some sort of layover. I mean, it can take like door to door 10 hours. Like it's not that.
No, it's not that far. But
I mean,
Phuket, Bali is 4 hours, so it's about 5 hours. 5 hours flight.
If you're doing like layovers, like I think I layovered in Singapore once, but I mean.
But Bangkok Denpasar has quite a few flights, so.
To direct.
Yeah.
Okay. I think last time I went, I've been there 5 times, and the last time I said I'm not going back. It was just, the problem with Bali, and that's for people that, how do you decide Phuket or Bali? The issue I found with Bali is maybe you're staying in Canggu and you want to go to dinner in Seminyak. Well, you could be in a van for an hour and a half. Who knows?
That's true.
And it's just, it gets quite frustrating. And yeah, you could be on a motorbike, but now you're on like farm roads that are one-way motorbikes. It's a bit stressful as well.
Yeah, true.
In regards to maybe like Koh Samui, I've thought about that, like maybe in 10 years that it could compete with Phuket if they're able to reduce the cost of traveling by flight between Bangkok and Samui. Currently, those flights, they range from, let's say, 4,000 to 8,000 baht. Meanwhile, you can get a round trip from Phuket at 2. But if they were to expand that airport and make it more accessible at a lower cost, do you see Koh Samui being a competitor?
Koh Samui has always been a competitor in a certain range of tourists. I saw it develop. I owned some land on the island once. But the speed of development is way less than Phuket. So actually they grew at the same time. Right, but at some stage Samui stopped because people realized that the size is not there in order to grow metropolitan style of shopping centers or putting this into Samui. The other major reason is flight expenses. Their exclusivity. Bangkok Airways has the exclusive. When they developed the airport, it was linked to Bangkok Airways' exclusivity to fly to Phuket, to Samui.
Is there a contract when that would expire?
I don't know whether there is still the contract, but whether it would ever expire, I don't even know.
I mean, whoever wrote that.
I think it's linked to that airport. And if anybody else wanted to fly where they're like Thai Airways, Thai Smile, Nok Air, or whatever they're called, they would have to build a new airport.
Yeah, I was wondering like why they wouldn't have cheaper flights. It would just bring. I feel like. Do you think part of it?
Monopolism.
Do you think any part of it has to do with like the province of Phuket? They wouldn't want that either because you might get people coming here for a week and then jumping over to Samui. And if it's cheap, it's possible. But when the price is that, they're like, I'll just spend my 2 weeks here.
Yeah, well, they have the option to go. I mean, it's not crazy expensive, and then they still can go by bus and ferry. You know. I mean, yeah, you can fly. With the road development from here to Suratani's.
The road's amazing.
It's amazing. It's only 3 hours. So and then 1 hour by ferry. Yeah. Some people enjoy the ride.
I was having a conversation. A guy was on the podcast yesterday, and he's doing some business now in Pattaya. Would you happen to know why are there no flights to Hua Hin from Phuket? Why are there no flights from Phuket to Pattaya? Like for someone like myself, I would love a flight from Phuket to Hua Hin just to go for a weekend to play golf. But I'm not going to fly to Bangkok and drive 3 hours to go play golf. Is there a reason why these connections don't open?
I think they have analyzed the potential already quite some time. And you remember there were recently some flights from Utapao to Bangkok. Utapao is the Pattaya airport.
Okay.
And they were stopped because hardly anybody on the flight, right? As long as... may not forget, the airports are way out. So if I go to Pattaya by flight, right, I have to drive to the airport. It takes me 45 minutes. I have to check in. I have to fly. I have to wait for my luggage and go out. By the motorways they have these days, I'm in Pattaya in 1.5 hours.
No, I'm sorry. I was referring...
Hua Hin is the same thing.
I'm referring Phuket to Hua Hin. Phuket to Pattaya. Why haven't
probably the same frequency problem, right? I don't think there will be enough people to justify that. Hua Hin doesn't even have an airport yet.
I thought I saw Hua Hin, or maybe it was Pattaya. I think there's direct flights from Malaysia to these places.
To Utapao, I think so, but I'm not sure. I'm not quite sure. But Hua Hin doesn't have an airport. It's only a very small strip for small planes.
The development, and I mean, since you've seen it all, the development of Phuket, I mean, we're almost at the edge. I mean, all I can foresee left is getting up towards like Lian, and there's a lot of potential up there. What do you see is next on the verge of the development in Phuket? What's coming?
Well, there is behind Macau, which is the most northern developed beach. There's another beach that goes up to Sarasin Bridge. That could be developed. Just behind the bridge, there's also up to Natai to the one side and Phang Nhat to the other side. There is still a lot of land that could be developed. So I think it will grow out a little bit of Phuket. Towards the northern let's say the northern point and beyond the bridge.
Yeah, like Nhat Thai and pushing. It's just those beaches. Once you kind of pass Nayan, the beaches kind of turn to that Khao Lak style, where it's it's not like Surin Beach or
yeah. Of course, it's not these cozy beaches. They don't have them. No. They have these very long beaches down there.
Yeah. Have you been up to Khao Lak recently?
Last time a year ago?
Yeah, it's. Have you been to Memories Beach before?
Not that I could.
There's a couple hidden. It's like an old surf school, but they're quaint. They're hidden. I mean, there's not too much to do in Khao Lak, but there's a big.
Okay.
There's a big. I noticed. Maybe you're aware. There's a big Swedish and German population in Khao Lak. Do you know why? Why is that?
Well, Sweden has a big tradition of traveling to this area, so. Just look at the tsunami. The majority of dead tourists were Swedish in 2004. And Khao Lak also. It was basically built on Scandinavian tourism.
Do you know why they decided to settle there? Any particular reason?
It's not a question of settling there. All Scandinavian nations are absolute minority now in Phuket or anywhere for people that call themselves residents, foreign residents, or even part-time residents. It's not so many. I mean, the majority is British. Second largest community is Russian, followed by the French and Belgians. Even we Germans are only number 6 or 7 in terms of local residents, and they are not a few. Looking at the fact that you have 8 international schools in Phuket with almost, on average, 600 kids, right? You can imagine how many families live here, foreign nationalities.
Yeah, and I mean, I can see it just continue to grow, especially as people become, more, I don't want to say digital nomads in that sense, but a lot of families are moving here, younger families that are able to work, remotely. I would assume that they're going to need to start maybe building more schools as well. I mean, because they're going to have to cater to this audience.
Well, at the moment, it's still quite a big frequency, fluctuation. People come to the island, leave the island. I see that at our school. They're coming and going. Always 10% coming, 10% going. Yeah, maybe at the end of the day, but the Americans just built Oak Meadows, another international school, opened last year.
Where's that located?
It's behind the Central.
Okay.
In Katu. Well, I see Phuket developing into a more luxurious spot. If you look at the famous places in the world, Saint-Tropez, Ibiza, Mykonos, Malibu.
Santorini?
Santorini is too small. Santorini is too small and doesn't have this flair, right? Phuket could become the Asian type of Saint-Tropez, right? Where really, really wealthy people have their retreat, whether for temporary time or for a certain period of the year or for the whole year. And the infrastructure is building around that. So it actually led me going to retire here. I felt after the first half year or 6 months or 8 months, I thought, Jesus, that's not enough for me, right? So I started also thinking of what could bring Phuket further in the direction where it is going now. So I started also some hobby businesses.
Yeah, let's jump in that and connect it. So you recently launched Eat and Grill. It would have been over the summertime when you're getting that all started. Now, initially,
last March.
Yeah, I visited when it was just being built as well. And initially, you kind of had the concept of like a beer garden, and things have transitioned. Can you explain a little bit about the location and the concept behind Eat and Grill that's located in Boat Avenue, and how that all came together?
Well, basically, it was a coincidence because in late 2020, somebody offered me the biggest plot of land in Boat Avenue near the lake, or on the lake, let's put it this way, because the former owner or lessee, he decided to leave Phuket, and he needed the money. So I took it over, not knowing what to do with it. Basically, it was a jump into an investment because I thought after COVID, that plot of land, which is the biggest and most beautiful in Boat Avenue, probably will sell well. But over time, given that you don't do anything on the property, it started to deteriorate. Even showing it to a potential buyer would have been an embarrassment because it was nearly a ruin, and totally littered. And so I said to myself, I might as well develop it. No matter what it is, I have to renovate it anyway. And then it went in line with what I said earlier. Phuket is going into a different direction, right? It's becoming more an island with a metropolitan flair, right? Where people that are actually used to city life would still feel comfortable here because they have all the benefits of island life and beaches in combination with everything being available, right? Whether it's food, restaurants, shopping, everything is there, right? Not to the extent of a city, but at least acceptable. That's when I said, we have Louis Vuitton, we have Chanel, we have Dior, we have everything here now.
Yeah, at the new Central now.
That's right. So looking at the restaurant business in Phuket, basically you have three choices. One, beach meets beach club. Second, hotel, right? Hotel restaurants. Or you go to restaurants, they are all located on streets, right? That means motorcycles driving by, cars, smell, all this kind of thing. Even the best are located at streets. So I said bringing a metropolitan style of restaurant that is different from everything else in Phuket to Phuket would basically be a market. So the beer garden was the second thought. The Metropolitan Grill restaurant was the first thought. So that's what we did.
Yeah, I think a lot of my girlfriend, she lives in Bangkok and she's coming back and forth, but she's pretty much settled here now. And most people that do live in Bangkok, and even for people like ourselves that visit there, that's the biggest hole always missing in Phuket. It's like we love it here, but the food there is so good. And if we could just bring it here as well. You guys have done that with Eating Grill, and could you talk a little bit about how you guys have differentiated from the rest of the competition in Boat Avenue? Because there really isn't another type of restaurant like yours in that area.
Yeah, basically what we did is we built everything around a huge grill, right? So the core of our restaurant is the grill, whether it is meat from the grill, whether it's seafood from the grill, it's all built around the grill. Our grill is 4.50 meters long or something like that, even has rotation grill. So that is a concept that is quite Mediterranean, right? So we were bringing Mediterranean style of idea, not country oriented. It is not French, it is not Italian, it's not Greek, but there are all these Mediterranean countries. So, and we said, if we can do a really decent steak, if we can do a really decent lobster from the grill or tiger prawn from the grill and garnish it with a lot of signature style things, that would be a completely different concept. And it would be unique because I don't want to go, most of the restaurant owners are my friends here actually. I don't want to show them competition. I want to add to the life in Phuket and just put something on top of it or, alongside. So we do a lot of signature side dishes and sauces that nobody else has. We have our own butchery. We have our own grocery with cold cuts and a crazy type of cheeses that you can hardly even buy in Villa Market. So in that sense, we are very unique. And if you see the location and the construction is very different than from anybody else here in Phuket.
Yeah, and you're right on the water as well. And as soon as this damn rain goes away, I think it will be a lot better. We went one night down there, and then the food was great. We had a great atmosphere. Then it just rains right at sunset. You're like,
yeah.
Okay.
It's also by size. Our restaurant has, I think, 160 seats. Only the restaurant and grill. The beer garden has another 180.
What now? I mean, me living in Phuket 6 years, Boat Avenue, most of the restaurants have survived and they do well, but some come and some go. When you're investing into a restaurant and these issues that could arise and why restaurants fail, to your mind, more from the personal side, why do some of these restaurants not succeed in Phuket?
Well, I think a lot has to do with the initial concept. The second major thing is the chef. If you have a good cook, you have already half of the success you wanted or you need. It's then how you promote and what finance you got in order to do really proper promotion. Because our main target area is, of course, the local Phuket residential people.
Like the expats.
But our promotion goes up to Bangkok because a lot of higher social level people from Bangkok, they fly over for the weekend. Some of them have holiday houses here or holiday apartments, and they also look if we go Saturday, Sunday, where do we choose to eat, right? So that's another market, but it's we didn't plan with tourists. So it's if others succeed or don't succeed, it has a lot to do with their initial concept.
Yeah, and I find it's a lot with the returning customers in terms of like the local expats living here, if they're coming back consistently. And you start to see that around the island as well. These are the shops that continue to succeed. That whole area of Boat Avenue, is that kind of like the final touch, or have you heard of any further development like going on in this area?
No, I think such developments like Boat Avenue heavily depend on what residential areas are around it. So residential areas that are really nice in terms of location, view, etc., are not so many left in Phuket, to be honest. So if you look at Laguna with its own golf course, with all these developments in Laguna itself, then going over to Layan, that's all vicinity, right? Even Surin has little nightlife in comparison to Boat Avenue, right? So I think Boat Avenue will be a real center. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it will continue to grow. And they're growing across the street. I was talking to Paul the other day. They're doing a type of residency there. It's called a Homa, Homa.
Yes, yeah.
And they're building that, and that whole... They're just gonna, if they can figure out a way to connect that to Boat Avenue with because the walking traffic's it's impossible.
Yeah,
they can figure out, I don't know, maybe a giant oversized bridge. Who knows? One last thing I wanted to touch on before we end this. We're almost at an hour. That clock comes in handy. It keeps me flowing well. Now you have also like a high-end fashion bikini store. It's called Infinity.
Yes, Infinity & Co. Yeah.
And you opened that. That's got to be 3-4 years, maybe more than that, right?
Well, that basically developed. It's my wife is handling that.
Before to frame that question, coming from the fashion industry and now bringing this high-end fashion to Boat Avenue and what you're doing, I mean, this type of product doesn't really exist around this area or the island. How did that
come? Not even in Thailand.
Not even
in
Thailand. How did that concept come together initially before you kind of put that or built that store essentially?
Well, it's simple. When we decided as a family to go to Phuket for retirement, my wife, who was a bit younger than me, said, I cannot live on an island without doing anything. And she came from the high-end fashion industry. She was working for as a store manager for a very famous concept store in Düsseldorf, and she was used to deal with high-end brands. So initially we did a quick research only here in Phuket. Later on we extended this to Bangkok and found that swimwear, for the level of people that live in Phuket, the swimwear market is totally underdeveloped. It's either functional swimwear, like these people like the Surfer or Arena or whatever the brands are, or it is cheap imports from China. So, but we saw the brands coming, in the garment industry. We saw Chanel coming, Dior coming. Said, wow, where are all these famous swimwear brands? Beach Bunny from the US, Lululemon from the US, Ozare, MC2 Cent Bars, and so on. And we saw the French brand Villebrequin coming here. So we said there's a market gap, right? Because do people really go functional swimming here? Or do they go to beach clubs and want to show off a little bit, go to be on yachts, right? Want to be seen. So we took it from there, and we built the concept for a rather exclusive swimwear store. I think my wife carries about 15, 20 different brands, the most famous brands in the world, and has them one in each size, so that people that buy it and go to a party or go to on a yacht appointment or to a beach club don't see the neighbor wearing the same stuff at the immediately, right? And that caught not only the attention, that caught the people to say, wow, we rather spend a bit more, but we have good quality products and exclusive fashion design.
Yeah, and they have those options when they come here, especially people, again, going to your Cafe Del Mars, going to your Kudo Beach Club or yacht parties as well. You have some options as well. How are you driving the traffic there? How can people find these stores, or what's the best way for anyone to come and find you for that information?
No, basically, Infinity & Co. is on Instagram, it's on Facebook. We don't do much advertising because it's mouth-to-mouth propaganda. A lot of people that know us tell others, if you want to have something like that, you have to go there, right? So we don't need this massive frequency because anyway, we have only, people asked us, why don't you do online sales? I said, if I have only 111, I have no stock, right? So the exclusivity, we rotate, or my wife rotates the stock very often so that we always have constantly new stuff, but not in depth, in masses, right? But we now opened another store in Blue Tree.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we have a second one in Blue Tree now.
Yeah, I think Blue Tree, initially when they opened, I wasn't sure how they were going to do, but then I think because COVID hit. But it seems like there's a lot of traffic being driven there now. I think it's just going to take some time before that whole complex opens up.
Yeah.
It's always been a question of getting in and out, but now they've opened up the back road on the Passac. It makes it a little, if anyone's unaware of that, it's probably better to come in
The
Passac.
shopping mall is still a bit quiet, but I think they will, now they have a new management, I think they will basically improve on the frequency and the customer flow. So we are hopeful.
Okay, just before we wrap it up, we're probably at about an hour, yeah? I just, one other quick question, because you have been here for the past 40 years, let's say. Are there any hidden gems in all of Thailand that, maybe most tourists or something that's on your radar that, you've been to that you would highly recommend for people? And it could be extremely off the beaten path, not in Phuket, but anywhere in Thailand that maybe people would not be aware of.
That's very difficult to say because people probably that come to Thailand to travel Thailand see almost everything. Well, besides the islands, I take the islands out. One of my favorites is the Golden Triangle where Laos, Myanmar, and Thailand meet. It's an amazing area. Then another area that people are not aware of is Khao Yai National Park.
Oh, north of Bangkok.
No, in Saraburi, which is more or less the Switzerland of Thailand. It's mountainous. It is much cooler than the rest of the country. It goes higher, up to 1,400 meters. It has all the wineries.
I think the Thais, they call it Korat.
No,
it's different than
Korat is Isan. That is north of Thailand, near the Laos border. Khao Yai is basically the whole thing is a national park.
Yeah, the waterfalls in there are massive. You can't swim in them.
Waterfalls. You have all the cow farms.
Yeah.
You know,
You see the deer running
all
around.
the dairy farms are there. It's a little bit like Western style, you know. You have ranches, you have horses. It's an amazing area, and people don't know about it.
Yeah, I've been up there. I think I did a few days up there. The only thing is, like, some people want to go there and go hiking, but watch out for the leeches. I don't know.
Yeah.
As long as if you drive around, there's wild elephants running around there too.
There are wild elephants.
I didn't see any. Yeah.
There are a lot of dangerous animals as well.
Yeah, you gotta be. I wouldn't go in the. You see them when people are going hiking. It looks like they got COVID gear on going in there because there's so many. And the leeches are horrible. They're super small. They can get right in your fingernails. Okay, we're gonna wrap this episode up. I'm gonna shoot this back to Thomas, to this camera here. Now you have events coming up for Christmas. We're gonna release this podcast next week, Hans. I'll talk to you about that. Anyways, you have events coming up for Christmas and New Year's, and also if you can just let everyone know where people can find you for Eden Grill. That's your camera there, and just talk a little bit about all that information if anyone wants to find that, and we'll leave links in the description. So if anyone's looking for that information on what to do on Christmas or New Year's, Thomas, take it away.
Yeah, okay. As mentioned, we have Eden Grill Phuket. We can be found on all major social media like Instagram and Facebook, TikTok, as well as our website. They are all called Eden Grill Phuket. So yes, we are planning for the season. We are planning quite a number of events. So we are starting off on December 13th with a show event called Burlesque, which is going along with the movie Burlesque, famous for Cher and Christina Aguilera. So it will be the songs and the dances and stuff like that. And Christmas Eve is a bit more festive. As I'm German, we Germans basically celebrate Christmas Eve more than Christmas Day. So Christmas Eve, we have a very beautiful set lunch alongside with exclusive wines. And it starts off with a choral chorus from Seventh Church. And goes along with Santa Claus appearance on 3-meter stilts, and ends up with a violin Christmas concert. And then comes New Year. New Year is, of course, a big party. Our place is big. We have 2 venues. Altogether, we can accommodate about 500 guests. And we start that off with a gala dinner of the absolute finest. We're gonna have from top tenderloin steaks to caviar. We have all the famous champagnes, and then it goes into a quite unseen European fire show. It's not like the Thai beach fire shows. It's far more dramatic. Which is on our ponton, our lake ponton in the beer garden. We do that 2 times, at 9 and at 10:30. And it ends with the traditional big fireworks all over the lake. So I think it will be a very interesting thing. We have 2 DJs. One of them is my son, quite well-known Dan Buri, who plays at the beer garden all night. And and we take it from there and see how long it goes.
And then on a side note, we were talking a little bit before, you're doing a medical clinic called City Care. If you don't mind, just especially with this medical tourism coming to Thailand, and this is exploding. Can you just explain a little bit about what that is? Here, just push the mic up a bit. Yeah. Just talk a little bit, what is City Care and how that came together and what it's all about.
Well, I mentioned that I did 20 years medical products. So my passion for medicine, with also my family background, is a very high level. So I saw with also the Thai government's announcement that they want to push medical tourism into Thailand. I saw the potential of bringing more innovative medicine into Thailand. So I joined up with a couple of partners, and we founded City Care as a special venue for not only general medical practices, but we do mainly stem cells. So we have our own laboratory now in Bangkok. We grow our own stem cells, and we, instead of using them as pure, let's say, a vehicle for rejuvenation or for beauty treatments, we emphasize more on the medical side, because shortly explained, live stem cells are cell multiplicators. So wherever in the body you have degenerations, like mainly in knees, shoulders, I mean all kinds of joints, where cartilage has degenerated, we inject stem cells to regrow cartilage. But we also do a fair amount of hair loss treatments successfully. We help people with diabetes, chronic rheumatism. So yeah, it's a very promising technique. It's forbidden in many countries. So Thailand is one of the few spots.
This is in Phuket?
That is in Phuket.
Where's it located?
Kamala Beach.
Perfect. We'll leave links in the description. You check that out. I mean, it is high season. That stuff probably sells quick. So probably just contact them through the Instagram is the best way.
Yes.
Maybe send a message on Instagram.
And stay in touch with us. We will have continuous events until the end of February. So more news coming up at any time.
All right. We'll wrap that up. Let us know what you thought about the podcast. Leave some comments, especially, again, we were more focused on Thomas's time in Thailand since the 80s and, bringing that information to light. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And that's the end of another episode. We're out.